This MacBook Air is a compact laptop released back in mid-2013. I bought mine exactly 3 years ago. Why did it literally save me at that time, and how does it work 12 years after release? In this video, I'll share why I still think this was one of my best purchases and how it feels to use here at the end of 2025. So stay tuned! A few years ago, I wanted to buy a small and light laptop mainly as a typing machine. My goal was simple. I needed something just for writing while my main computer was busy. The only two things I cared about were weight and battery life, so I checked what MacBook Air models were being sold in my area. That's how I found this 13-inch MacBook Air from mid-2013, sold just a mile away from me. The laptop was in good condition, with only a few scratches on the body and a couple of small spots on the display that were visible only in certain light. The battery capacity was still around 90%, which was amazing for such an old device. I paid $130 for it, and it felt like a very good deal. So, what were my first impressions back in 2022? Honestly, I didn't expect it to be this good. I had used a MacBook Air early 2008 before, and that model was really raw and unfinished. In comparison, the Air 2013 felt like a completely different class of machine. Finally, a nice display with auto brightness, a comfortable keyboard, a trackpad so good I could forget about using a mouse, decent speakers, and of course, lightweight and long battery life. That was exactly what I had been missing on Windows laptops before. I was impressed by almost everything here, even the built-in webcam and microphone. The mic actually recorded audio on the level of iPhones from that time, which is pretty good. I also enjoyed the integration with other Apple devices, things like AirDrop, or the ability to quickly continue your work from iPhone or iPad. Aesthetically and ergonomically, it was just a joy to use, but what surprised me the most was the silence. This MacBook, despite its age, was often completely silent. That was shocking for me, especially after my old Lenovo IdeaPad. The Lenovo had stronger hardware and I cleaned it regularly, but its fan was almost always spinning. Meanwhile, the MacBook Air had a dual-core processor with only 1.3 GHz base clock and just 4 GB of RAM, very weak hardware even for 2022, and yet, for light tasks, it stayed quiet most of the time. Of course, this MacBook is not for gaming. Even simple titles like Stardew Valley, after about an hour of gameplay, could make the fan roar like a small jet engine, especially in the summer. The bottom cover could also get uncomfortably hot. But if you only work with text, browse the web, or watch some videos, it remains almost completely silent. And if you have good internet, you can even play through cloud gaming without much noise and without killing the battery. I actually played quite a bit on GeForce Now, even though my country doesn't have local servers, but I truly appreciated this MacBook a few months later. It came to me exactly when I needed it most. Because of the war, my city started to have long power cuts. Electricity could be gone for 8 hours a day or even more. At the same time, my new remote job required me to stay online constantly. I had to write posts for social media, and all communication with my co-workers was happening through Figma. I had to keep Figma open all the time, work on projects together with the team, and at the same time use browsers and text editors. This MacBook was my only way to keep working during those blackouts, and it lasted for 4 or even 5 hours straight. And not only work. Sometimes I watched movies on it too, and later I even used it to power my Wi-Fi router. The autonomy of such an old machine honestly impressed me, but of course, that heavy use left its mark on the battery health. This MacBook still had its original battery from the factory installed back in 2014. I was lucky that the laptop had not been used much, so the health was around 90% when I bought it. On macOS Big Sur, I could get about 8 hours of use, which was great for such old hardware, but today the health dropped to 61%. Maybe that's normal. After all, the battery is more than a decade old. And how long does it last now in 2025? Well, it's not my daily driver anymore, but I can still use it for 3 to 4 hours. I'm simply happy that it's still alive at all. So, that was my experience back in 2022. But how does the MacBook Air 2013 feel today in 2025? Well, you can feel that the internet has become heavier. Google services, including YouTube, now take longer to load, but they're still usable. Operating systems also became heavier. Big Sur was the last macOS officially supported on this model, but thanks to Open Core Legacy Patcher, I upgraded to Monterey and later even to Sonoma. In my opinion, Sonoma was already too slow for this machine, so I went back to Monterey. And honestly, Monterey runs just as well or sometimes even better than Big Sur. Technically, you can even install newer versions like macOS Tahoe. But some people say that Ventura was the last macOS truly optimized for Intel processors. So I don't think I'll try newer versions here. Also, this model only has 4 GB of RAM, which makes it even more limited today compared to the 8 GB version. Another downside is the quality of the charger cable. These things start looking awful pretty quickly, sometimes within just a year, but somehow they usually keep working anyway. Do I still use this MacBook today? In some ways, yes. Like I said, it's not my daily driver anymore, but in fact this laptop almost never gets turned off. It usually just stays in sleep mode and I wake it up for simple tasks. It became like an extension of my phone. Whenever I need to quickly check something or fill out a form and the phone screen feels too small, I just grab the MacBook and do it there. In a way, it feels like using an iPad, but with a keyboard. So for me, even in 2025, this MacBook still makes sense. You can even edit some full HD videos in Final Cut Pro and export them in just 10 to 15 minutes, which is pretty fantastic for such an old machine. But would I recommend buying one now? Well, I'm not so sure. Even the i7 version with 8 GB of RAM is very weak hardware today, and prices for these old machines are still unfairly high. If you find one on auction for a very low price or get it for free, then maybe it makes sense. But don't forget, Apple will soon drop all support for Intel processors. When that happens, even Open Core Legacy Patcher won't help you get the newest system with security updates. So what options would remain? Well, you could buy a MacBook with Apple Silicon. The first gen models are already cheaper than a few years ago. Or you can always install Linux. It actually works quite well here, though battery life on Linux is worse than on macOS. Many people bring old or even vintage Apple devices back to life this way. I personally had a very positive experience running Linux on a 2008 MacBook with a polycarbonate body, and maybe one day I'll make a video about that too. But this MacBook Air 2013 gave me a lot of positive moments over the years. For me, it was truly one of my best purchases. Feel free to share your experience with old MacBooks in the comments below. Thanks for watching and see you next time.